If we reject the methods, the personalities that Yah uses to grow and to mature the people of Israel, do we not do so then to our own hurt and destruction? Now, this Barry Phillips with 10-Minute Torah, day 5 of Vayigash, if I can say that. We are today in Bereshit or Genesis chapter 46. Let's drop down to verse 31 through the end of the chapter, which says, "And Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, I am going up to inform Pharaoh and say to him, My brothers and those of my father's house who are in the land of Canaan have come to me. And the men are shepherds, that they have been men of livestock, and they have brought their flocks and their herds and all that they have. And it shall be, when Pharaoh calls you and says, What is your occupation? Then you shall say, Your servants have been men of livestock from our youth, even till now, both we and also our fathers. So that you dwell in the land of Goshen, for every shepherd is an abomination to the Mitzrites." Now Joseph knew that when his family came to Mitzrayim, to Egypt, that they would be exposed to a much different, a greatly different society and culture than that which they had experienced in their isolated walk there in Canaan. Not to say that the Canaanites were not depraved, they were, but it's understood that the Mitzrites, the Egyptians, had taken it to a different level. It was just socially accepted that there were things that Joseph knew his family would never accept and be extremely uncomfortable in the midst of. To isolate them then in the land of Goshen, a certain favored section that would be good for flocks and herds, seemed to be the most ideal situation. And to enable that to be a greater possible reality, to identify themselves as shepherds would cause Pharaoh to say, well, then I need to separate you from mainstream society because of a perceived abomination. Now, what is this abomination? Later on, when Moshe is dealing with Pharaoh, Pharaoh says, take your people and go out and do your sacrifices, or you can do them right here. And he said, we can't do that. The way we would offer and worship would be an abomination to the people of this nation. Again, what is this abomination? There was a Mitzrite deity, and very ancient one, going back some 3,000 plus years BCE, that the Mitzrites refer to as Kanum. This is a king of the gods style person or deity or belief of sorts. It is thought to be a creator level God, creating human beings on his spinning wheel with clay. So his face was that of a ram, or could be looked at as a sheep. Therefore, to sacrifice rams or sheep would be akin to killing this god. Therefore, it's an abomination. So in short, what we're saying then is the Mitzrite culture rejected the idea of shepherds, and that they were perceived to be controllers or manipulators or abusers of sheep, which sheep then representing this particular false god. There has been a trend that has developed not just within Hebrew roots circles, but especially so. It does also continue into the mainstream Christian world to some degree, and that is the rejection of shepherds. And for oftentimes the same reasons, that shepherds have been seen as abusers, controllers, and manipulators. Yah makes similar charges to the shepherds that he finds or references in Jeremiah 23. Woe to the shepherds, verse 1 says, destroying and scattering the sheep of my pasture, declares Yahweh. Therefore, thus says Yahweh Elohim of Israel against the shepherds who feed my people. You have scattered my flock, driven them away, have not tended to them, and seeing I am punishing you for the evil of your deeds. If we read a parallel prophecy from Ezekiel in chapter 34, the word of Yahweh came to me in verse 1 says, Son of man, prophesy against the shepherds of Israel. Prophesy and say to them, thus says the Master Yahweh to the shepherds, woe to the shepherds of Israel who have been feeding themselves. Should not the shepherds feed the flock? You eat the fat, you put on the wool, you slaughter the fatlings, you do not feed the flock. You have not strengthened the weak, nor have you healed the sick, nor bound up the broken, nor brought back the straying, nor sought what was lost, but you have ruled them with might and harshness. And he goes on to say that the result is they're scattered all over the mountains, and you're not looking for them, and I myself, rejecting you, I myself will go and look for my sheep, and I will shepherd them. So that's where the context of what Yeshua's words and Yochanan or John chapter number 10 come into play. In verse 11, he says, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. But the hireling, and not being a shepherd, one who does not own the sheep, sees the wolf come in and leaves the sheep and flees, and the wolf catches the sheep and scatters them. The hireling flees because he is a hireling and is not concerned about the sheep. I am the good shepherd, and I know mine, and mine know me. So we have multiple references then to the spiritual aspect of what it means to be a shepherd. You are to provide guard and an oversight of your sheep. You are to look for those that are straying. You are to bind up those that are broken or wounded and pour in oil and wine to those that are infected or have an open wound. You are to lead them, to guide them, to make sure they have good pasture, clean water. You feed them well. You do benefit in that you receive the wool, and from the meat of some of the sheep you can partake. That which you labor in, you have an opportunity to also receive benefit. That's just a scriptural principle. In Ephesians chapter 4, Rav Shaul says that among those that are called, situated, and placed for the maturing and growing of the body, it includes the office of shepherds. Yet, there is at times a mitzrite, an Egyptian mindset that creeps in and says, I don't need a shepherd. Being offended because someone in some situation in your perception of things abused or manipulated or controlled or neglected you, led you astray in some place, maybe brought you to bad pasture and unclean water in your estimation. That is not giving anyone legitimate gripe enough to reject the office and the role of shepherds altogether. Whether we want them or not, most people do, but some don't. Whether you want a shepherd or not, they are vital and they are necessary for the growth and maturity of the body of Messiah. We cannot afford to neglect the role and the office of shepherds and pastors. Pray for them. Listen to them, follow them, and let Yah use them to help you to grow. Shabbat Shalom to you, to all that you gather with, even if you just gather with you and Messiah. May you find his presence with you in your gatherings and your living quarters. May the word leap from the page and find lodging place in your heart, and may you be filled with the Master's light. Until next week, Shabbat Shalom.